College football saw a few shakeups this weekend, but no change to Dennis Dodd's top three in his latest power rankings. Georgia, Michigan, and Texas still the best team in college football, according to the Dodd father. No mercy, though, for Florida State, who drops a spot after that scare to Boston College. And grab your hats and your sunglasses, fellas, because those Buffs continue to climb behind Deion Sanders. What a fun week of college football we had last weekend. And as we get prepared to take a look forward, we welcome in our guys, Brady, Quinn, and Dennis Dodd, here with us to talk college football. Guys, what an exciting weekend.
Yeah, and we got a bunch of ranked matchups coming up this weekend, too.
I was going to say, this past weekend, there weren't many ranked matchups. People thought, it might be kind of a ho-hum weekend. Yeah. It was anything but that in college football.
Yeah, we're going to see a shakeup when it's all said and done. Dennis, let's start with Texas, by the way. For you, holding steady at 3. So you were ahead of the voters last week when you had the Longhorns at 3. Pulled away late against Wyoming. Where are you at right now with this Longhorn program?
I think it was an Alabama hangover on Saturday. Once again, Quinn Ewers wasn't outstanding, but in the fourth quarter, I looked it up. Last two fourth quarter guys, Texas, 316 total yards, 42-7 over the opposition against Alabama and Wyoming. Maybe this is just who they are, but I think they can be blamed or excused, I guess is the word, for coming off that huge game against Alabama and going into the fourth quarter tied 10-10 with Wyoming. They'll be better than that. Their goals are all still ahead of them. As I said that night, or as I wrote that night at Alabama, I don't think Texas is necessarily back. I think they're good, but they're not great. And that even, includes winning the Big 12. They got to show me something more than that this season.
Dennis, in looking at these rankings, I was a little bit surprised that you gave Texas the nod over Florida State in particular, because you can chalk this up to a hangover. But, guys, I'm starting to get the sense that maybe Texas just plays to their competition, right? That you play up to Bama, able to make some big plays, pull the one out, and then you kind of have that maybe hangover, whatever you want to call it, but you played down to Wyoming. It's no disrespect to Wyoming, by the way. There's been some other Power 5 programs that have gone to Laramie and not come out there with a win. So kudos to Texas for putting together to get the W. As Dennis said, everything's still out there for them. I just still have some question marks about the consistency of the offense, not so much the defense. The defense actually has been the most stable piece of this team moving forward. It just comes down to Quinn Ewers and this offense and whether or not they can consistently put up big numbers like some of the other teams we see out there, especially when we're talking about top 4, top 5, top 10 in college football.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind with Texas. But you mentioned, Dennis, Florida State. Let's talk about them, right? Because shout out to Boston College for all their penalties they had on Saturday. I believe they had 18 for 131. Why are we shouting that out? Because that's how Florida State essentially won the game in that one as they escaped 31-29. Brady, I want to go to you first because this is a series that always feels pretty close between Boston College and Florida State. But as we see, they dropped down in the rankings for Dennis Dodd. What concerns do you have with them?
Well, first off, I would say I wouldn't drop them if I was doing these rankings, only because it's a conference opponent. So there's a little more familiarity there. They know how to prepare for you. And we just used the word hangover for Texas after that big win over Alabama. Well, this is a trap game. That's what you look at when you got to go on the road to Boston College. And then what's next week? A road trip to Clemson. And that's going to be one of the tougher ones. Maybe Florida State was looking a little bit ahead of themselves. This game was not as close as the score looked, all right? Florida State dominated this game in the first half. They allowed Boston College to find their way back into it. Kudos to them, but the reality is I think Florida State's the better team right now. I think they're more proven right now based on their wins and based on what they've done so far. So I'd probably have them ahead of Texas. They've been a little more consistent outside of the fact of that close call versus Boston College. But again, that was kind of more garbage time. Maybe you do some things a little bit different as far as how you get out of this one.
Yeah, I agree with Brady. It's so hard to play at Alumni Stadium sometimes for power teams. The stands aren't full. Boston College isn't a hotbed. You go up there, you expect to win. There's no atmosphere. So that's what I blame that comeback by Boston College for. Jordan Travis was hurt. The end of the first half came out and then led a quick touchdown drive, and they were in control. But in regards to Clemson, this is Florida State's world. They've got to prove that they're the preeminent, power in the ACC. The thing being, whoever wins this game, it could just be a preview of the ACC championship game because they're going to the top 2 ranked in the conference now. It's going to be huge. We're going to find out who's better. But Florida State's a 1 point. I think it's significant. Florida State's a 1 point favorite at Clemson, or the second time in the last 10 years that an opponent has been favored at Clemson. And that Clemson's been playing okay since that first game of that shocker. So This is Florida State's opportunity. I think they get a chance to go through and get Clemson and declare themselves, at least for the moment, the preeminent program in the ACC.
One more quick point on playing Alumni State and playing at BC. I remember I was there as I believe it was a true freshman. They told you, hey, make sure you wear your helmet on the sidelines because they'll throw batteries at you.
No
way. No lie.
Double A's? I was going to say.
AA batteries. You hear these clink off the helmet. I mean, we just saw the Monday Night Football game with Tyreek Hill said how nasty the Patriots fans were. Those Boston College fans, they are nasty now. I think they got a pretty foul mouth. So I don't know.
Goodness.
There's not so many places you go to get batteries thrown at you like BC.
You got to have that radar and sensory thing around you. Make sure you don't get swiped with something. All right, let's continue the conversation, Dennis, with a ranked matchup we mentioned this weekend is chock full of them. We have your 10th team in Oregon facing 11th ranked Colorado, and you've been higher on the Buffs.
Hold on for a second. Hold on. You've got them right next to each other, Dennis. I mean, Oregon's a 20.5-point favorite in this regard. Like, is there that big of a gap in your mind between 10 and 11 in your power rankings?
Not for what Colorado's done and Dion. As I've tweeted, I think this is not only one of the biggest stories of the year. I think this is one of the tentpole moments in college football history when you consider what Dion has done to basically take an expansion team and turn them into, look, top 11, top 10, whatever you want to call it, to get to this point. But absolutely, do I believe Oregon is a 20-point favorite? Yeah, probably, especially with Travis Hunter out now, which sets up some interesting matchups. Travis Hunter played 149 of 160 snaps against TCU. And so now Colorado's going to have to go conventional. It was really interesting Saturday night. The offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, they opened the game in a 4-wide receiver set. That was their base. When they lost Travis Hunter offensively, they went to more 11 personnel with a sophomore named Michael Harrison, who went for 7 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that all-important 2-point conversion. They're going to have a backup corner on defense. Obviously, Travis Hunter returns kicks as well, so that's going to be huge. So, yeah, look, is there 20 points difference between 10 and 11? Yeah, I think there is this week.
I mean, look, this is going to be a tough matchup for Colorado, and for a lot of the reasons that I think we've talked about throughout the course of the year. It's not skill. It's not a quarterback, all right? Shedeur Sanders is one of the best in the country. Their wide receivers are some of the best in the country. You miss Travis Hunter, obviously, being able to match up, play man-to-man, because he can eliminate one of the best wide receivers at Oregon. The difference for me is in the trenches. You know, Oregon has been able to, not only have depth there, but some of the top, most talented recruits in the country they've got on their side of this. And we'll see if the offensive line for CU can hold up, and really whether or not the defensive front can stop the rushing attack of Oregon. So this is the first true test. I think when you now look back at how Nebraska has struggled, even though TCU now has been able to recover from that early loss, when you're kind of looking back and handicapping these teams, CSU now is 0-2. This is the first true test where you say, all right, if they can compete, if they can beat Oregon, now we're really talking about something as they head into that huge matchup 2 weeks from now versus Southern Cal.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind as well. Travis Hunter, that injury, we're still waiting on an official diagnosis from the school. Let's switch gears, though, and talk about Alabama, because when you talk about a fall from grace, this is a team that I feel like is already on a down year going into this year. We just heard from Nick Saban a few minutes ago. He says that Jalen Milroe has earned the right to be the quarterback this year after the team struggled against South Florida. They lost to Texas. Dennis, you have them at 16 in your power rankings. Man, what a conundrum the Crimson Tide is right now this season.
Well, the biggest question is, look, are we watching this dynasty unravel before our eyes? I'm not ready to say that because, obviously the recruiting classes Nick puts together are huge, and we'll see next year. But for this year, they look like an 8-4 team. And as I wrote last week, how did Nick Saban let the quarterback room get to where it was? Up until that point against Texas, I was sitting there thinking, Nick's going to show us something that we don't know, that Jalen Milroe can do. And he is who we thought he was. He's a runner who's a one-dimensional runner. When he's flushed, he always goes right and cuts off half the field. And then I was shocked, again, struggling against South Florida. They didn't even see the field. You had Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson who couldn't do anything, and now Jalen Milroe is going to be the starter. It looks like desperation to me. And if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm licking my chops right now. Alabama somehow is a 6.5-point favorite in this game. I think it should be the opposite. I think it should be Ole Miss by 7 or a touchdown, because I think they've got the offensive chops to do it with Jackson Dart and those receivers.
Well, we've seen Lane Kiffin have success versus Alabama before. I think the difference here is, how good that Alabama defense is. I don't know that we're giving them enough credit. They give up some big plays versus Texas. No one's going to get behind that. The reality is, outside of those few plays, they're actually pretty good, pretty efficient. So I think that's why we're looking at an Alabama team that's favored headed into this big matchup versus Ole Miss. I don't know if they have quite as much firepower on the outside like they have in years past where they put up some big numbers versus Nick Saban. But the truth of Alabama right now is they don't have an identity on offense. And that's something that, you can talk about the quarterback room all you want. It's not like Ty Simpson wasn't a highly touted or recruited quarterback, or Tyler Buchner for that matter, or Jalen Milroe. But they've got to figure out a way of finding the identity, and it's really hard to do that when your offensive line plays as poorly as they have. I mean, that's the reality of this. You've got two stable pieces, your center and your right tackle. The rest, it's as inconsistent as you will find. This is a highly penalized team. This is a team that's starting a true freshman at left tackle, which is always going to be an issue for you. And right now, you don't know what you can do well on a consistent level, not even running the football. So that's more of the conundrum that I think. It's not just Nick Saban, it's now Tommy Rees as he's trying to put in his first year of his system, and he's got to try to figure that out. So they're Alabama. They will figure out that this run is not over for Nick Saban. They will get this right come hell or high water. That's how it works there down in Tuscaloosa. But Milroe does give them the best chance to win with this group. He just needs a little more time, more reps, more development, and developing some of that touch playing from the pocket. Will he be able to do it this year? Yep. I don't know. It's tough call in season, but I think down the road, over time, eventually he will get there.
It just seems, guys, that they're kind of doing things on the fly, which you're not typically seeing from an Alabama team. And I know if it happens, too, two really good teams in Texas and Ole Miss, but back-to-back home losses, and Brian Denny would certainly cause a lot of panic there in Tuscaloosa. Got a couple more teams left here, Dennis, and you might be getting the most disagreement maybe with these two. Let's start with Tennessee. You remain higher on the Vols than most, and then Brady Quinn's one of them here after that loss at the Swamp.
Look at their resume. What have they done? What have they, outside of being an SEC team, what have they done?
Yeah, I agree. Look, Tennessee right now.
They're your power rankings, Dennis.
No, look, right now, I'm with you. I think they should be in the top 25. We can argue about where, but I think because of what they've done, they should be there. But look, what were they good at last year when they turned the corner? They were good at tempo and throwing the ball. Well, you can only do tempo when you complete passes. It's like the fast break in basketball. You can only get things running when you make baskets. And that's not what Tennessee does, right now. Joe Milton is still a guy who can throw it to the moon. We don't know if he can hit the moon, and I think you saw that Saturday night. And then I thought that was huge for Billy Napier. He needed a game like that where they wedged it out. They dominated Tennessee, which still hasn't won in the Swamp in 20 years. And it really helped a guy like Graham Mertz, who needed a competent booster. So Tennessee has taken a step back. Not to say everything's down in the dumps for the Vols, but I'll take being beat up. I still think they have some talent there.
Look, no one's going to deny the talent. I think the truth of the matter is, though, if we're looking at power rankings or AP top 25, I just think if you don't have that big T next to it, they shouldn't be ranked. I mean, they beat a Virginia team that's 0-3 right now. I mean, you really can't hang your hat on anything. And I think that's the hard part is defensively, they couldn't tackle. Offensively, couldn't run the football. Couldn't create the big plays like we've seen, even though Joe Milton does have the ability and the big arms. So I just don't know if there's any justification putting them ahead of teams like Washington State, for example, which I know is not in Dennis Dodd's power rankings, but look at their resume right now. Look at how Cam Ward is playing right now. They don't get enough attention out in Pullman. I think they've got a much better case for being ahead of a team like Tennessee. So if you want to put them in there, Dennis, that's fine. I'm just telling you right now, they haven't done anything to actually warrant being considered a top 25 team. Wazoo, on the other hand, they do. They've been a legit team so far this season. I think they deserve more credit.
Yeah, let's talk about Wazoo, because, Dennis, I also have a bone to pick with you here. The first time in their history of playing between Oregon State and Washington State that both teams are ranked in the AP top 25. You, however, feel differently about Washington State. What you got against Pullman, man?
Yeah, no, nothing. That's one of my favorite stops in college football, going to Pullman, especially when Mike Leach was there. I also have Florida ranked, so we can go on for half an hour on all this. But I have Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma in, maybe because I've seen them live, and I like what they've done. But you cannot take away what Washington State's done. They've beaten Wisconsin. Cam Ward has come into his own, the transfer from Incarnate Word. By the way, name me a quarterback in the Pac-12 who isn't a transfer. I'm not talking them down. I'm just saying that adds to what the Pac-12 has been this year, which has been a fantastic year. They've worked the portal to excellence. But this Oregon State, two teams that will be ranked in a lot of people's minds, is the TRO Bowl, the temporary restraining order. This is what's left of the Tupac. And Oregon State's been great defensively so far. They haven't given up 20 points. Meanwhile, Washington State's given up like 22.3 per game, and that might would put Oregon State through here. But in a year when the Pac-12 is, I'll say this, the best conference in the country, and it may not even be close, this is going to be a good one.
It's pretty crazy. That's how potentially the Pac-12 will end. But again, I look at how high you got Colorado up there at 11. I'm like, wait a second. They just played
Tennessee at 17.
They just played Colorado State. Washington State drummed them in Fort Collins, and then meanwhile, CU was just happy to survive in overtime at that point. So again, more love out there to Cam Ward. Keep balling, young man. You're doing a heck of a job. We are watching, even though we're all the way across the country in the Southeast as we tape this, and you're way up there in the Pacific Northwest. We're still watching you. We're still seeing it. They should be ranked. The AP poll obviously has them ranked, but Dennis, I guess they got to do more this week to be in your good graces.
Yeah, based on this, if they lose, they're going to be ranked.
The Dodd ranking system.
You're not giving credit for their wins. You've got Clemson in there. What's Clemson done so far? They struggled with Charleston Southern.
Hey, I dropped Kansas State from 15 to out after that performance, so there is no sense to this stuff.
That was the agreement with the voters as well. Kansas State after that. Dennis, thank you. Brady, thank you for a great conversation we're having here on a Monday. They always have a good one in the Cover 3 podcast. Week 3 reaction as Florida downs Tennessee, Missouri edging K-State, and the backyard brawl. Chip Patterson, Tom Fornelli, Bud Elliott, and Danny Cannell.